This is something. The spoiler is servo driven and you can adjust the angle with the trim on the radio. It's got some pretty bright lights, huh? That's a lot of ride height. It's like the family truckster.
She is.
Cool diffuser and some fancy chassis graphics. On the workbench, guys, is the brand new Rlaarlo AK-787. This is actually my very first Rlaarlo car. They've reached out to me in the past, wanted to send something over for us to check out, but this one caught my eye. So I pulled the trigger on it and it's a 1/10 scale brushless ready to run 4-wheel drive. It looks like they're going for the speed thing here. From what I gather, they've got 120 kilometers per hour, it's like 75 miles an hour. And it just looked like a really cool car to me. It's got a Group C prototype body on it. I think this was the Mazda livery. Let me know if I'm wrong in the description below. And then they have another version which had the Renown sponsorship, or actually a variation of it. It's not licensed, but the body looks pretty cool, right? I mean, it's got the prototype shape to it. I like how it's got the clear lenses in the front with dual lights, LEDs in there, even a red LED light. They got mirrors on the fenders, and overall it's a good shape. However, the body sits kind of high, and this is about as low as it could actually go because it hits the shock towers. Now, you can go and drop the ride height a little bit. It does seem pretty high to me. They've got some droop screws in there, which I'll show you in a bit. But back to the body set, they've got oh my God, that was the national alert system. Think that's some sort of sign? They've got tethers on the body clips, which doesn't actually seem all that aerodynamic, but the really cool thing is the spoiler out back. It's servo controlled. So if you want to get some downforce on there, doing some road type racing, you could go and angle it up. Then if you're going for some speed runs, you could drop it down so you get that nice airflow over it. Pretty neat setup. There's a couple amber and a red running light in the rear, and then a diffuser down below, which actually has a really cool shape to it. Now let's take a closer look at the chassis. Once you pull the body off, the car actually gets a bit more impressive. I really like the look of this. It's 1/10 scale, and it actually tricks you into thinking it's longer because of the long front bumper and the side plates, but I actually put a Team Associated Apex chassis next to it, and it is the same wheelbase. So it's a 10 scale in size. They have an aluminum chassis plate underneath. Check this thing out. Look at all the etching on this and the nice jeweled edges and everything. That's a very cool look to it. And then these side plates on the bottom have like this carbon fiber texture to it. That is very cool. And even this upper top brace here, it is a molded composite piece, but it does have that carbon fiber texture as well. And from what I read, they've got a ton of option parts for this, carbon fiber option parts. So you go deck this thing out to be a real high-speed car. If you get really into it, grow into it. So up front, there's a large foam bumper to support the body, give it a little extra protection in the front. We've got aluminum shock towers in the front and rear, and I like the wide stance on it, the way the shock is spaced out. And the shock itself looks very cool. It's aluminum body, aluminum upper cap. The pivot ball ends are composite, but at least they've got metal pivot balls in there as well. And they've got some very firm springs and what feels like some very thick oil inside, so it's set up for on-road use. The suspension arms, these are pretty neat, pivot ball style, and it looks like there is some adjustment there. I like how they've got two different colors. The steering knuckles look like they're a decent size, and even it has adjustable turnbuckles and sway bars in the front and rear as well. Let's just spin this around so you guys could check out the rear of this. H-arms with the adjustable turnbuckle up top. That's a pretty good setup. I mean, it all looks good. Same style shocks in the rear, just a little bit wider of a shock tower. And I like how the shock tower is etched and even jeweled just for some extra flair. Now, usually I take the drivetrain apart for you guys, but the gear cases are really nestled into these bulkheads here, and it just looks like a lot of work, and I didn't have the time to get these apart. But it feels like they've got some decent heavy diff oil on the inside. They've got metal outdrives. I can see ball bearings and CV universals in the front, and then in the rear they've got some dog bones, which it's fine for the rear, and then a aluminum center shaft with steel outdrives for those bevel pinions coming out of the gear cases. So it looks like a decent setup. And then I did go and pull the gear cover off the rear, just kind of wanted to see what the spur gear setup was. They do have a really good aluminum motor plate on there that integrates into the spur gear support, but a simple spur gear just bolted up to a aluminum plate, so you could actually swap those out. Looks like they give you some extra spurs and a pinion in the kit, so you can go run a different ratio for higher speeds. This is probably just set up for general running. Now let's get back into some of the chassis stuff here. The battery mount looks like it could fit a little bit higher than this included 2S battery pack. They include a 3300 milliamp LiPo battery for you. It comes in the car, actually. There's some foam spacers underneath it. On the other side, you got this large radio box sitting on top of the servo. At least it houses all the wires, keeps everything neat. A dual bell crank steering setup. It does have a servo saver, and then this bright green drag link connecting the two, which is odd because there's so much red on this car. And actually, I forgot to mention, they have aluminum pivot blocks as well for all the suspension pins in the front and rear, which is just another cool thing to see on a car this price point. Looks like a standard size steering servo. I don't know the exact specs on it. And then the speed controller looks pretty cool. I haven't quite placed the manufacturer of this. Maybe ZTW? I don't think it's a hobby wing. But nonetheless, I like how it's all wired up. It's got an XT60 plug on it, and nice short leads back to the motor. It's a VS60 speed controller. It's 60 amp, 2 to 3S, and it's got a large aluminum heatsink on top with a cooling fan and even a cooling fan support with the Rlaarlo logo on it. Then back to the motor, it's a 4300 kV, so it's got a stubby can to it, but this should give us some decent speed. Then I noticed it's got like a little power wire, maybe that's for the sensor, and here is your on-off switch. Rounding out the electronics is the Rlaarlo 2.4 gigahertz radio system. Really cool looking radio. I like the wheel on it. I like that you could adjust the rear spoiler with the trim adjustment. You also find an instruction manual in the box, a catalog with their parts, those gears that I mentioned before, some basic tools, and even a little stubby antenna pipe. But everything's nicely wired up. I mean, it's got a very good look to it. Check out the wheels and tires. So they've got the speed dishes on the front. It's just kind of weird because on it says take up the dirt, and this is an on-road car. I don't know why they printed that on there, but I like the speed disc itself. And underneath it are these chrome 5-star wheels with a rubber tire mounted to it, not a firm insert on the inside. I don't even know if there's any insert at all. I mean, it just feels so soft, caves right down to the wheel itself. And it's a very good looking car overall. I just want to see how it holds up durability wise, if it can hit some speeds. Now, the box does say it hits 120, but that is with optional gears and electronic parts is what it says right next to it. So we're going to go out and test the speed right out of the box and show you a little bit of on-road driving action too. All right, guys, we're going right for the speed test. It is completely stock out of the box with the 2S battery pack. All I did was put in my GNSS. Let's hit the start on the phone and let's see what it could do. Check our trim out of the box. Looks decent. It's got a responsive servo in there, and it's pretty noisy too. And there's top speed. All right, okay. Let's see what we got here. It is, wait for it, read 16 miles an hour. That's quite disappointing. All right, so I took a look at the radio system and the endpoint wasn't turned up all the way. It was about at 75. So hopefully we get some more speed out of it. Let me reset this, track start. Hopefully we get some more speed out of this. There we go, there's some more speed. All right, that was better. That's about what I was expecting for a 2S battery pack. And let's hit it. Stop. Read 33. That's a lot better. And of course I brought a 3S pack with me, so we're gonna try this. Just as I threw the 3S pack in there, some guy parked like right where I was running. So we're switching things up and we're just gonna do a little road racing, see how it does in the parking lot. All right, guys, so here it is back on the 2S battery pack. And that tall ride height is actually helping out in this parking lot because it's a beat up parking lot and you see the thing bouncing around. At least it's not bottoming out. So I want to test something out. I want to put the spoiler all the way down. So that's more speed ready. Let's see how the rear end stays. Oh, the rear end's all over the place. Look at that. Now some of that might actually be tire and actually setup, but wow. Now let's give it some more downforce. Crank that spoiler all the way and let's try it now. Oh, a little bit better. Just a touch. I mean, it's not a massive difference. Maybe just barely. This thing likes to be at a higher speed. That kind of makes sense for this company. Whoa. Man, that's a wild machine. Woo! All right, guys, now we're going to do the 3S speed test. Track, start. Oh, we got 12 satellites this time. Got a reedy pack in there. Helps if I turn on the car. There we go. Here, and throttle into it. Whoa. That is not easy to drive on 3S. All right, one more attempt here. Roll back around, roll into it. Ooh, and I think I heard some gear skipping. Let's see what we got. Stop, read, 50 miles an hour. Okay, that's a decent speed out of a 10 scale car. Let's head back to the workshop so I can give you additional thoughts on the car. All right, guys, let's wrap things up here. And I actually almost wrapped it up after that first speed pass. That was a little on the slow side, but let's start off with the good stuff. I like the body set on this, the prototype styling, the nod to the Mazda graphics and everything. And when you pull the body off, it does look impressive. As I mentioned, I like the aluminum parts that they have on it. The layout is really nice, and it looks like it could be a fun, capable speed car. And for the price tag of 199 bucks, I think that's pretty good, especially since it's got a brushless system and a LiPo battery in it. You just need the charger. The radio system's pretty neat. Not too bad looking, but when I went out and drove it, it left a bit to be desired. Starting off with the speed, I mean, it was like a 16-mile-an-hour run at first, and they didn't have the transmitter set properly. The endpoint adjustment was off, and that's one thing, if you're touting speeds, that should have been set right. I could understand adjusting your steering trim, but not having the throttle set right, that should have been done at the factory. Luckily, it's a super easy fix. And once I adjusted the trim, it went 33 miles an hour, which is decent, but they're touting 120 kilometers per hour on the box, which is like 75 miles an hour, and at 33, that's close to half. And for something like this, I was expecting maybe 40 miles an hour out of the box. That's a little bit closer to that 75 mile an hour range. Gives you a little bit more excitement. So you're definitely, I think, gonna wanna go and get a 3S battery pack. We hit 50 miles an hour on 3S. That's a much better speed for a car that's aimed at guys who wanna go fast. And I think the car is capable of going faster. It's just gonna need setup work. And it's actually gonna need a lot of setup work just for you to drive it out of the box. I mean, it's really set up to look like a road racing car. You're gonna wanna drive it around the parking lot. And when I drove it around the parking lot, it was an absolute handful. The rear end was just not planted at all. I think the tires are a big part of it. They're like a hard tire, and they did loosen up a little bit, but they don't have a good insert on the inside. So you're just riding on the edge of those tires. You're not getting full traction on it. I also think that the shocks need to be laid down a bit. They're stood up, which is good for high speeds. Once you roll onto the throttle and get to higher speeds, it handles well there. But at lower speeds and in cornering, the car is just all over the place. You're also gonna have to readjust the ride height as well. It sits way too high from the factory. And I showed you guys this car right out of the box from the factory, so you know what to expect. But yeah, it's gonna need some work. And using that spoiler to help settle the rear of the car in doesn't actually really do much. It's a little bit on the gimmicky side, and I wouldn't hinge your purchase on just that alone. Durability wise, I kept it off the curb so I didn't break anything, and I tried to replicate that gear clicking sound that I heard under braking, but wasn't able to do it here at the bench, so maybe it was just the front end diving and skipping off the ground. But I will say that the drivetrain on this is rather noisy at the beginning, and it does taper off a little bit. So Rlaarlo definitely has my interest, and I think I'm gonna revisit this car. I thought they were actually supposed to send some more parts so I could go and create a project with this, and there was actually this dual motor mount in the box. I'm not sure if this is actually gonna come with the car or this is one of those options they said they were gonna send. And they actually sent a note on a postcard as well, and a bottle opener, which will come in handy around the workshop. But I think these guys, you know, they've got something going here. They're making a great effort, and I'm definitely interested in the brand. Let me know what you think about the car in the comment section below, and if you're really interested and want to see more, I'll have links in the video description.